Hello, and welcome back to Voyage of a Time Wanderer. Today is Friday, August 6th, and I am here to do a Friday Reads video. So I thought I would share what I'm planning to read this weekend and in the week ahead. My husband got called in to do an extra shift on Saturday, so I'm going to have time alone at home to do lots of extra reading. So I've got some books that I'm in the middle of that I'm hoping to finish off, as well as some that I am planning to get started on. I've been thinking that for months where I'm not doing a month-long readathon, I'd rather do a few Friday Reads videos rather than a monthly TBR, because I enjoy talking about books when I've already started reading them and have some thoughts already, and I also feel less pressure then to only read what I put on my list at the beginning of the month. So I'll definitely still do monthly TBRs for the months when I'm doing month-long read-alongs, so Jane Austen July, Victober, nonfiction November for sure. And then in other months I might do more Friday Reads videos to talk about what I'm currently reading, rather than a monthly TBR at the beginning of the month. So without further ado, I'll start with a few of the books that I'm already in the middle of that I'm hoping to finish off. On Kindle, I am reading Lockdown by Pitre. Pitre is one of my favorite mystery thriller authors. A lot of his books are set in remote areas of Scotland, but this one is set in London, and this is pandemic fiction. So the story behind this book is that this was actually the very first manuscript that he ever finished and shopped around to publishers, and it's about if London was locked down because of a bad flu virus. And at the time he wrote this, which was the early 2000s, all the publishers said it was too unrealistic and this kind of scenario would never happen, and they didn't want to publish it. So Pitre ended up scrapping that manuscript and shelving it, and ended up going on to write his Enzo mysteries and his Outer Hebrides Lewis trilogy series, and becoming quite a famous thriller author. And then in March 2020, when things started to become more serious with the coronavirus pandemic, he pulled this manuscript back out, polished it up a bit, and obviously people were very eager to publish it at that point. So like all of his mysteries, this definitely is on the gritty end of mystery thrillers. It's definitely not a cozy mystery. It centers around the body of a young girl who is found at a construction site for an emergency hospital. So they're converting this park into an emergency hospital, and they discover a bag of bones. And we are following along as they try to track down the killer. According to my app, I am 41% of the way through this book, and I think I'll probably finish it off tonight. His books, once I get going in them, usually don't take me very long to read because they are very compelling and you really want to know who did it. So I've been really enjoying this one so far, and I am planning to do a video soon on the various pandemic fiction that I have enjoyed over the last 18 months. The other one that I'm in the middle of is The Weight of Ink by Rachel Kadish. That's the one that I had mentioned in my Jane Austen at Home tag as the book that I was planning to start next. So I am currently 19% done with this one. It's a dual timeline book switching back and forth between the present day and 17th century London, and is focused on the Jewish community in London at the time. So we're following the story of a young girl who ends up becoming a scribe for a rabbi after her brother dies, and then in the present day there's renovations taking place at a state house, and a cache of papers are discovered, and so a university professor and a PhD student are called in to kind of assess these papers and their historic value to be appraised to possibly be added to the university's collection. So in the present day, they're trying to kind of uncover the story of who wrote these papers and their significance, and then we switch back to find out the story behind the paper's creation and how this girl ended up being so well educated and working as a scribe. This one has also been a pretty quick read so far, so I think I will probably have it finished off by the end of the weekend as well. So when I get those two finished, the next fiction book that I'm planning to start is Memoirs of a Geisha by Arthur Golden. This is one of the books from the World Book Day battle that Kate Howe hosted on her channel. It was Christy Lewis from Dostoevsky in Space. It was her pick, and it didn't end up winning the actual book battle, but there was a number of us who were still interested in reading it, so there's going to be a buddy read this month of the Memoirs of a Geisha. I think I actually do have it out on Libby on audio as well, so even though I got it out of the library in the physical format, I think I'll probably end up listening to it on audio, as I don't have an audiobook on the go right now, and I do like to always have an audiobook, so I probably won't actually be physically reading this one. I don't know a ton about this story except that it was very popular when I was in high school, and I had always meant to read it but hadn't got to it. And since then I've kind of seen some mixed reactions. There's some people who really love it, and then I've also heard some negative things about it. So I'm curious to finally get to it and find out what my opinion is. And then looking ahead into next week, I don't think I'll have time to get started necessarily on this weekend, but I wanted to mention it because I am so excited about it, and that is Cathedral by Ben Hopkins. This is a 2021 release, so it's brand new, and I was so excited to see that my library had bought a copy. It was on the new arrivals shelf last time I stopped in to pick up a hold. And this is obviously a huge book, but I have seen it recommended for people that like Ken Follett and Hilary Mantel. And I'm really, really hoping this captures the emotions that I had when I read The Pillars of the Earth for the first time. It sounds like a fairly similar plot premise, and since The Pillars of the Earth is by far my favorite book out of that quartet, I'm really excited to read this one. So unlike The Pillars of the Earth, this is set in Germany rather than in England, but otherwise it's kind of a similar format in that it does cover a long time span. So we've got book one starting in the early 1200s, and we're gonna go all the way up into the 1350s. So it's like a 120-year time span following a medieval German village and their attempts to build a cathedral. I'll read the blurb because it definitely lists a lot of keywords that are things that make me love novels, so I have very high hopes for this. A thoroughly immersive read and a remarkable feat of imagination, Cathedral tells a sweeping story about obsessions, mysticism, art, and earthly desire. It deftly combines historical fiction with a tale of adventure and intrigue. At the center of this story is the cathedral. Its construction in the 12th and 13th centuries in the town of Hagenberg unites a vast array of unforgettable characters whose fortunes are inseparable from the shifting political factions and economic interests that are vying for supremacy. Around this narrative center, Ben Hopkins has constructed his own monumental edifice, a novel that is rich with the vicissitudes of mercantilism, politics, religion, and human enterprise. Readers of first-rate historical fiction will delight at the atmosphere, the beautiful prose, and the vivid characters of Ben Hopkins' Cathedral. So I'm always fascinated to read historical fiction that looks at tensions between political powers and religious powers, and as well this sounds like it's going to have kind of a multi-generational aspect where we're going to follow this town through the building of the cathedral. I'm a little apprehensive because in just reading this I realize they say the 12th and 13th centuries when it's clearly the 13th and 14th centuries if it's the 1200s and 1300s, but I'm going to stock that up to a publisher error for now and assume that Ben Hopkins has done a better job researching than the flap would suggest. So I'm really excited to start this one. It starts off with a quote from Job, and then it has a little bit of poetry here, and then we get into book one, which has a whole bunch of different years and character perspectives, so it looks like kind of similar to Pillars of the Earth. A lot of the chapters are going to be from different characters' perspectives. So that's one that I'm hoping to read, not necessarily this weekend, but in the coming week. And then for nonfiction, because I always like to have a nonfiction on the go as well, I'm planning to start the review copy that I received from NetGalley of The Real Valkyrie by Nancy Marie Brown. I have read and loved her past two works of historical nonfiction, The Ivory Vikings and The Voyages of the Far Traveler, which are both focused on telling the stories of Viking women who have been hidden somewhat in history, and The Real Valkyrie is no exception. This is focused on the Viking warrior grave that was found in Birka, Sweden, and after the archaeologists concluded their investigations, they realized that the skeleton that was in this grave was that of a woman. So in The Real Valkyrie, Nancy Marie Brown is going to try to reconstruct what the life of this female warrior might have been like, and kind of the role of powerful women in political and military roles in Viking societies. So she does such an incredible job of bringing these long-forgotten historical figures to life, and I'm sure this book is going to be excellent as well, so I'm keen to get to it, and I will do a full video review, I think, just prior to the publication date. And then the book of theological nonfiction that I'm slowly getting through this month is Jesus and the Jewish Roots of the Eucharist, Unlocking the Secrets of the Last Supper by Brant Pitre. I am this far through so far. I've been reading through it slowly, making notes, putting in some flags on interesting topics. Like the tagline suggests, this book is examining the Last Supper and the Eucharist through Old Testament typology and the practices of Temple Judaism as they would have been in the time of Jesus. So far, I'm really enjoying it, and I have learned some new things about how the Jewish practices around the Passover celebrations kind of evolved from the time of the Exodus through to the time of Christ. So that is the theological nonfiction that I have on the go this month, and definitely not one that I'll be finishing this weekend, as I prefer reading this kind of book in small chunks, but I thought I would include it on this list nonetheless. So these are the books and ebooks that I'm hoping to get to this weekend and in the week ahead. I hope you enjoyed, and leave a comment down below with what you're planning to read this weekend. Until next time, enjoy wandering through the pages of a good book. Bye.